Hi, everybody. I'm Tim. One more time. Come on. Hi, everybody. And by the way, if you haven't had a chance yet to check out Luke's suit, get up close because it's some very interesting stuff going on there. I encourage you to do it. I am Tim. I am currently Director of Product Development at a company called Brightbyte. But what I want to talk to you about today is another company that I worked at where I was working with as the head of product development with some other folks you've seen from today. Jim Rubel. Jim is out here. There's Jim over there. And we had a very special team. There are lots of us here today. You probably have heard of Think Through Math. We're all sort of splintered throughout this crowd. And when Think Through Math was acquired a couple years ago, a lot of us left feeling, wow, we did some really cool stuff here, culturally, technologically, and wouldn't it be nice if we had some record of that? Now, little bits of those records live in different places, right? Some of it's open source, some of it could be in blogs or different talks, but what I wanted to do today is talk to you about some of our processes that we used, give you some examples of things that we did, and tell you what worked for us and what didn't work for us. And my hope is that you can take away from that some things that you could take back to your everyday and give things a try. How does that sound? Yeah? All right. So, Scrumbanzen, right? I may or may not have made this up. I haven't checked, but it works for me, so I'm going with it. A little bit Scrum, a little bit Kanban, and a little bit Kaizen. Or, simply put, how we evolved our Agile processes to deliver early and often, but then there's gonna be a lot more. Because as I started thinking about this, I'm like, wait a minute, there's so much more than just that. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So, first, a couple of quotes I think might resonate with you. Who has heard or said something like this? Stand up takes too long. Have you ever heard that? You might have even said it. No, absolutely not, right? In fact, what you see here is a new trend in stand-ups, which is everyone gets on the floor and does a push-up because they hope that's gonna make it go even shorter. I think most people just end up in pain. I think that's how that ends. How about this one? I don't care what everyone's working on. It's not important to me. I just want to get back to my desk and I want to sit and I want to answer my emails or do what I need to do. I just don't care, right? Sound familiar? Oh, another day of planning poker. I'm not going to get back. Right? How many of you have sat in a room and played planning poker only to leave the very next day and go, this is all crap. It's all crap. It doesn't mean anything, right? How about this one, which is a very popular trend? I got yelled at because my burn down chart shifted. Right? Don't you love managers who are like, why did that shift? Did you know that's the point of a burn down chart? It shifts quite a bit. That's because things are always moving. We're working in an agile environment. We're trying to adapt and deal with change. So, sorry, things are gonna shift. Here's another popular one. Another retro. It's the same issues. They never get resolved. We sit and put stickies on the board, and every month it's the same stickies, and we walk away and nothing happens. I bet no one has ever had that experience in this room. Never. So we have these problems too, right? Because every organization kind of does. I think if everything had been figured out, we would have this magic formula and we'd all be doing it and we'd all be incredibly happy working at sustainable paces and loving everything that we do, right? But we got some problems. So clearly not everything's worked out. But we also have these lovely agile principles that are there to help guide us. And these were there to help guide us at Think Through Math as well. These were the sums that really resonated with us as a team. Satisfy the customer through continuous delivery of working software. Deliver working software as frequently as you can in the shortest amount of time. And working software is your favorite or is your primary measure of progress. Yeah, we want to ship things. That's why we do what we do, right? We want to put some stuff out there in front of people, get their feedback, see their delight, and then keep moving, right? So we wanted to do that too. Business people and developers need to work together, and a lot of times the most efficient way of conveying information is face-to-face communication. What does this mean? We want to work with other humans, right? A lot of people stereotype those of us in technology as people who just sit there with our laptop and have our headphones on and don't want to talk to anybody, which is why we work in technology, right? Because we're all introverts and we all just want to be alone, right? Hey, that's not true, right? Absolutely not true. We want to work with other humans, and the Agile principles tell us that that is something that we should strive to do through our practices and processes. At regular intervals, we should reflect on how to become more effective, and we should always pay attention to technical excellence and good design, right? We want to improve whenever possible. That was another principle, right? You restated, anything we do, we want to figure out a way to do better. If something went wrong, let's find a way to fix it and prevent it next time. We talk here about self-organizing teams. That's where the best architectures and designs emerge from. And of course, build projects around motivated individuals, right? Give them the environment and support they need to get their job done. What does this mean? We want to empower each other to be the best that we can be. We want to have a team where we lift each other up, give each other the tools that we need to be successful, and leverage those tools to be successful for our clients and customers and the rest of our teams. So, we've talked about our challenges. We've talked about the principles. How do these start to come together? Well, let's start to deconstruct it a little bit. Let's start with the Scrum portion of Scrumbanzen, right? Time for stand up, right? Sometimes, I know teams that blow horns. I think we used to have different sound effects on the soundboard that indicated stand up was time. So here's the things that we tried as a stand-up. Now, keep in mind that some of these things changed over time as our team size grew and shrank. But overall, this is kind of the things that we tried, and some did and did not work. First, we tried a single team stand-up, probably 20 to 25 people, 9 o'clock to 9:15. Let's do this, okay? At about 9:10, sometimes we had about half the people that are already reported. And between 9:10 and 9:15, you started getting the nothing to say, nothing to say, nothing to say, nope, no blockers, everything's fine, just to get to 9:15 so we can all disband, okay? So stand-ups went long, and then people did to keep meetings short, so like, nope, I got nothing, let's keep moving, I got nothing, let's keep moving. Then everyone gets back to their desk, and there's all sorts of information that starts being shared through HipChat or Slack, right? So that in itself was a bit of a problem. There was also the social benefit, though. We actually liked getting together once a day to kind of check in. Maybe we weren't checking in this particular instance on so much what we were working on, but we were checking in with each other as individuals. And that was very important to us, so we had to kind of recognize that. But we had to try some other things to kind of fix this, like, why are we getting together and we're just not getting the right information out? So at one point, our team grew so large, we split into a couple dedicated development teams. Each, we might call them 2 different Scrum teams, if you will. Each of those teams had a different backlog, and each of those teams had their own stand-ups. So what was nice about that is maybe there was one team that had more of a remote presence. They were able to have their stand-up time whatever made sense for them based on whatever time zone they might be working with, which gave them a sense of agency, and they liked that. Some shared teams, though, like QA and UX, they ended up having to attend multiple stand-ups, right? Because they were shared across the team. So now some people went from 1 daily stand-up to potentially 2 daily stand-ups, which was, something that was a little bit of an issue. And of course, sharing information across the teams became challenging. Each one of the teams would share information with their team, but information was not cross-pollinating between the teams. So we thought, okay, well, this isn't something that's kind of working that well for us, because maybe each of these teams is functioning fairly well autonomously, but now we almost have like 2 different departments that we're trying to keep together, and that's tough. So we eventually went back to and maybe tried a single team and maybe doing stand-ups less, right? If stand-ups aren't, something that we want to do, even though we like to check in, maybe we don't have anything to share because there isn't that much to share. So let's just stand up fewer times. So we tried doing stand-up a couple times a week. Not only did sharing information become even more challenging, but then we missed seeing each other twice a week. A number of us said a couple different times, boy, like every time we get together, like Monday and Thursday, we'd be like, dang, we really like getting together. Why aren't we doing this? This is fun. And so those are some different things that we tried. Now, where we landed, we had to think hard about what we were looking for out of our stand-ups, right? Because oftentimes in Agile processes, not that anyone's ever had this issue, we stand on ceremony, right? We do things because Agile says so, or Scrum says so, and we don't really think about whether those things work well for us. So we reflected. The social element, as I mentioned, was very important to us. We wanted to make sure that stand-up was sort of part information sharing as well as project status, and we knew that there were folks in the team who were struggling, and stand-up really wasn't giving us that information about where somebody is struggling or somebody needs some help or maybe there's a QA bottleneck. So what we did was flip our stand-ups. So instead of each person reporting, we reported out by project. So say we had 3 projects going on at one time. Whatever designee to speak at the stand-up for that project, usually an engineering lead or someone like that, would speak on behalf of that project, give a project status. They would help us walk through their project Kanban board, which helped us understand who is overworked, who is underworked, where is there a bottleneck, and maybe wondering, has anyone been spending too long on any one task or story? Now, keep in mind, even though we kind of had one designee, anybody else on the project could speak up. Anyone could say, hey, yeah, thank you, Jeff, for pointing that out. I also wanted to point out X, Y, Z. So we took this lens of saying, stand up, we want to view through the lens of a project and report out on a project basis as opposed to an individual basis about what individuals were working on. So that also helped us do something else. This process was something we put together. He's a fellow by the name of Dev Wizard. And Dev Wizard, and he is a real wizard, by the way. In fact, Steve Robivero can tell you all about him back in the back of the room. Part of our stand-up was also, as I said, understanding where work needed to be attended to that you wouldn't necessarily see through individual reports. So Dev Wizard looked across all of our repositories and all of our issues and said, hey, here's how many pull requests are outstanding. Here's how many QA stories have yet to be completed. Here's how many things need release notes before we can pass them on to deployment. And how many PRs are out there that are waiting to be deployed. We looked at that too, because that helped us understand, are there things we need to do with QA? Are there pull requests we need to be attending to? And keeping all of this transparent and open helped us every day keep each other accountable to making sure that work never stood unaddressed. Retrospectives, and I love this little GIF because sometimes retrospectives start out this way, right? We're like all excited to get together, and then like after like 3 hours, we're like, okay, like we've retrospected a lot. Like we talked about a lot of stuff. What's gonna happen next? So here's some idea of what we tried. We tried retrospecting at the end of each sprint for each team. Again, this worked for the team that was working on individual projects, but information was not being shared outside of that team. So then we said, all right, well, maybe it's just a matter of documenting what each team is doing. So we tried to then say, at the end of your retrospectives, put what you're working on and what you've learned in a Trello board. I know you're all shocked. No one looked at the board. Right? How dare we put something out in Trello and no one read it? But hey, that's what happens, right? So where we landed, we wanted to continue the project retrospectives because those were very important to the individual projects that we were working. But we tried something else. We did a whole team retrospective that was not project specific. This was something that we did once a month. We tried with various cadences, but we landed ultimately around once a month. And this was some place for us to come together as a larger team, as humans, share positive experiences we've had with each other no matter what the circumstance, share successes that we have had as a team, either on projects or through trying different things, and talk about ways that we need to improve as a team. So, for example, some of the issues that we discussed were, hey, our bug triaging process needs help overall. How do we get together and figure that out? We had a production issue at the 2 weeks ago. We need to figure out what caused it. We solved it, but now we need to go back to do a root cause analysis and figure out how we prevent it. Communication. Is everyone getting what they need in terms of communication? Those were a thing that we talk about these retrospectives. Social outings, right? Who's in charge of planning the next outing? What is that outing? These are things you wouldn't really see at a team retrospective or a project retrospective, rather, because it's about the work. But this retrospective was not so much about the work, but about everything surrounding the work. Pull request etiquette, even office conditions. We spent a lot of time talking about desks and chairs. A lot of time. Some people not very happy. A lot of time, where's Andre? Is Andre in there? A lot of time talking about the conference rooms and the audio in the conference rooms. A lot of time about that. A lot of time. But that's what we did, right? And so that really helped because then we could address our project-based issues with a particular project, and then we could still address our team issues at this larger retrospective. So that worked really well for us. Scrum says, estimate and track your velocity. You know what I say? Hell no. Hell to the no, right? Now, what we want to say, and which we thankfully were empowered to do quite a bit, it's done when it's done, right? Now, that's not so simple. We can't just say it's done when it's done and then walk away for 6 months and then pretend that, like, you know, we don't have to tell anyone anything. So it's not quite as simple as it's done when it's done, but we didn't estimate, we didn't study velocity, we didn't do burn downs, but we did do a couple things, and I'll share those with you in a little bit. So that's a bit of how we worked the Scrum into the Scrumbanzen model. Let's talk about the Kanban piece of this, right? Kanban says, visualize and manage your workflow. Now, I love this particular diagram because you can see, like, hey, you know what? You can't get good and fast and cheap all at the same time. Some stuff has got to give. Here's just a small smattering of all the different products that we tried to manage through our workflow. A lot of these look familiar to you. We tried just about every one of these. You know what happened at the end? That. Guess what? Newsflash, not any one project, even Jira, is gonna fix every single problem, right? What happens most times? We think the tool is the solution. The solution lives outside the tool. The tool merely supports the decisions that we make as a team about how we want to work together with the work. But let's talk about where we landed. Keep it simple, stupid, the KISS method. Usually that's the best method. For us, that meant align as much as we could to a GitHub-centric workflow. When you saw all those tools on the previous slide, we were still doing work in GitHub, but we were maintaining status of that work in these other tools, and a lot of times they weren't connected to GitHub. So we had, you know, I was going in, for example, looking at things in one view, developers were looking at things at a second view, and those views didn't talk, and we said, well, wait a minute, we're using GitHub for our workflow. We should do as much there as possible. So we did. We landed on GitHub issues, and we visualized those GitHub issues through a tool called Waffle, and this was before GitHub projects came out. So in many ways, GitHub was like, well, crap, like all these other tools are taking our issues and using APIs to visualize our data. We should probably do that too. So this was before projects came out, but we used Waffle. Waffle helped us get a Kanban view of every project, let us spot bottlenecks, see status of stories, change issue states. You could filter and see, like, let me see all the tickets for any one person Kanban style or any one status Kanban style. And these boards facilitated our daily stand-ups when we looked at them by project, as I just mentioned. Here's a beautiful view of one of our Waffle boards. Isn't it pretty? It's pretty. Kanban style, as you can see, but this is how we started looking at our work. This is what we did in terms of that Kanban principle. So Kanban also says, limit your work in process, right? Now that means different things to different people. What we tried to do first, as a team that was growing and as a company was growing, we just split everybody by 10. Right? Everybody works on everything. Some people are working on 10 things at a time. Some people are working on 5 things at a time. Guess what happens? I know you already know what happens, right? None of those things get done well. Some don't get done at all. And we all get super freaking stressed out about it. Okay? That doesn't have to happen. So we did that. Then we said, okay, well, maybe we need to put some limits on this. So let's limit our open PRs, right? Except we didn't actually limit them. We just put a warning in that popped up and said, oh, you know, you have too many PRs open. You should probably deal with that. But nothing stopped, right? And then, of course, like we normally would, we started ignoring that too and just kept on moving. So where we landed, upon reflection, we needed to limit work in progress at the project level, which essentially means have fewer projects going on at any one time. Therefore, instead of having 10 projects going on at any one time with 10 people split across them, have 3 projects going on at one time where those teams are dedicated to that project for the life cycle of that project. That means that you can focus on one initiative at a time with a dedicated team, and yes, maybe the business looks at that and says, well, they seem like they're doing fewer things, but in actuality, we're not. We're very purposefully doing things in a way that allow us to sustainably ultimately reach end results, right? So we're not working on 10 things at a time that we're never going to ship next year. We're doing one thing well, maybe two things well, and then we're going to ship those. And everyone's going to work on those things, and when they're done, and we're all going to move on. And that's how we worked on that. It helped us increase focus, increase quality, and we also shipped to production lots. And we did so as often as we could, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. So that's the Kanban view of Scrumbanzen. Let's talk about the Kaizen piece of this. Now, the Kaizen piece is a little more amorphous because Kaizen is really lots of principles. It doesn't really give you tools, but it's all in how you interpret these principles that you can use the tools. Am I timing? Okay, better? Got it. You'd think I never used one. Principles versus practices. Every time you touch something, whether it's a code, a process, a document, an automated test, is an opportunity to improve it. Leave it better than you found it. And we did that a lot. Anytime that we would start looking at something, if it could be improved, we improved it. And that was a principle that we stood by. Don't ever live in a world of, this is the way we've always done it, so this is the way we're going to continue to do it. Right? Maybe time is something that you don't have to change something, but never think that you can't ever go back and say, we need to change this and we have to change it. And just because someone says we have to keep it because it's the way we've always done it, does not mean that it's something that we need to retain. Try new things, test, learn, repeat. Everyone on the team is part of solving the problem. As a personal anecdote, I was staying up till 3 a.m. writing release notes after production deployments. And the team was like, why are you staying up till 3 a.m.? I'm like, well, because I don't know what got released until it got released. And then I got to go through my whole process to do release notes. And they're like, we can fix this. If this is your problem, it's our problem too. And that was really exciting because we came together to fix that problem. You heard this already once today. Strong opinions, weakly held. Jim Rubel brought that up. Seek opinions from multiple people. Have opinions, but be sure to listen to other opinions and be prepared to maybe change your own based on those opinions. And of course, small improvements are better than no improvements at all. Treat others as you want to be treated. If you have an idea that criticizes another idea, or if you want to criticize another idea, have an alternative proposal for that idea. Correct issues when they occur, understand why they happen, and improvement happens at all levels, not just management. So ultimately, through Scrumbanzen, we landed in this simple process. And I looked at this process about a few months ago, and I said, wait a minute. This is really simple, but we did so much more than just this. That process alone just doesn't tell the whole story. We had our processes, but it was everything outside the process that we did, whether it was culturally, whether it was about tools, whether it was about how we worked together, or the things that we did together socially, that informed the success that we had as a team. Yeah. Wow, all this time, agile, agile, agile. Yeah, it helps, but it wasn't all about that. Do you want to hear about all these myriads of things that we did? Maybe really fast, in like a lightning round? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. I'm going to promise not to scream into this, but I'm going to get really excited. Let's see. Can I get someone to time me? You got it? What are we timing at, Ray? Oh, let's do 2, but that's still going to be tough. Ready? Yep. All right. When you're asked when things are going to be done, or why is this taking so long, there's usually a question behind the question. Many times that question is, I need to see your progress because I want to give feedback on it. Don't leave me in a black hole, right? So engage with your stakeholders often, usually through demos, webinars, and keep them in the loop. Bam. Consider sprint demos a performance that should be well choreographed tour of your work, focused on stakeholder value, appealing to your audience on their level. And in fact, what you see here is actually an article on GitHub about how we coached each other to give a good sprint demo. Let engineers represent their work at demos, period. Invite other teams to present their work at your demo. At TTMs, we took what was a normal sprint demo, we turned it into a company demo. I invited marketing to come and present at this demo, sales to present at this demo, account services to present at this demo. Just because they're not working in sprints doesn't mean that they can't offer something up every 2 weeks to share with the company. And it helped unify us around the product. At demos, applaud when people do good things. High fives are good too. Show them your support. Pull elements from development and project management frameworks that work for you. Ignore elements that don't. Try, reflect, adapt, and try again. Empower others outside of engineering to share the workload. For example, we train customer support to actually work in the code. I myself wrote some SQL queries. I did some coding every now and then, and I also did some lovely copy changes. I love to make copy changes. But guess what? That helped our engineers focused on higher level work, which is what made them happy and made them motivated. Relentlessly prioritize and plan, then do it again and again. And if you're a product manager, always be thinking 1 to 2 sprints ahead. Your team will love you for it. They'll love it when you say, I am ready when you are ready. Resist the urge to assign lots of action items from retros. Pick 1 to 2 things to act on. This will increase the likelihood of actually being successful coming out of a retro. Relentlessly automate whenever you can, wherever you can. If you're touching some code, put in a test for it. Boom. Yep. Use feature flags to ship to production often. You can address bugs that way, and you can allow the product team to train and socialize new products and features before going live. Refactor purposefully, but do it as a negotiation with your product manager. Sometimes we can't always refactor, but that doesn't mean we can't ever have the conversation, because many times we can plan it in. Own your gotchas before they own you. If there are things that are happening as afterthoughts every time you release something, make sure you address them head on. This is something we did called a new initiative checklist, which was all of our gotchas, put them in a list. Before we started every project, it was, what is gonna screw us? Let's fix it before it happens. Relentlessly commit to transparency and documentation. This is an example of what we had. We had a meta repository. That was everything from how to run a good stand-up, how to use GoToMeeting, and how to actually set up the daily stand-up. So a lot of that information, be transparent, put it out there. Consider a slice plan. In lieu of estimating, we did this thing called a slice plan. This slice plan, for example, is 10 slices. A slice plan is a decomposed version of your work. Show this to your stakeholders. 5 slices of a 10-slice plan is roughly 50% across, 50% done. That is how we showed progress instead of actually measuring velocity and measuring estimates. This also allows you to get to the what is good enough to be done question. Some stakeholders are like, oh, you show them after your product after slice 3, they're like, ooh, that's good enough, let's move on. Give stakeholders a source of truth so they can go and self-service, whether that's project status, project information, roadmaps. Put it out there, guide them to it often, maintain it for them, let them self-serve through it. Allow developers to help with QA if there's a jam. Of course not if they're QAing their own work, yeah. Define done early and often. Release notes, customer enablement, release management, all of those need to be part of your end-to-end process. Do not leave them to the end. You need to consider them the whole way through. If you're tacking them on at the end, you're gonna be asking for trouble. Whether a part of your organization's HR initiatives or not, do know that you are empowered to define your own values and expectations as a team and document what you want to hold each other accountable to. For us, we defined our values as a team, what we wanted to stand for in our work, and expectations from each other. Professionalism, what you're expected to do, how you're expected to treat your coworkers. These are things that you can define and should, because they help the culture of your team. Labor-intensive processes, don't accept them. Find a way to be able to do them more efficiently and turnkey. Don't just accept them because every year we do this one big thing and we just can't, and we'd only do it once a year, so we only worry about it once a year. You still have opportunity to make it better. If you see this in your email, take a deep breath first. I learned a lot of belly breathing at Think Through Math. I'll just put that right out there. Do it, 10% time. Hackathons, take the time to experiment. Schedule meetings to minimize context switching, right? That means having your meetings first thing in the morning, right before lunch, right after lunch, or at the end of day. Of course, be respectful to folks who aren't in your time zone, but that really helps keep context switching to a minimum. Consolidate your retrospective planning and other admin meetings into a single day if you can. Doing so means you'll have less typing than talking on that day, but at the same time, that also means that all those other days around that day, you can actually plan your time better and not have to worry about being interrupted with meetings. If your team is a mix of co-located and remote folks, make sure remotes are treated with first-class status. We did not perfect this, but I think we left ourselves better than when we started. Develop your teams, keep them motivated. In providing work, consider your employees' interests as well as those of the actual business. How'd I do, Ray? No. Yes. So yeah, that was basically everything else. And there's a lot more, but I threw a lot at you. But a lot of it were just stuff that we were like, yeah, this is what made us special, okay? So I want to thank you. My name is Tim. You can find me on various social medias. One thing I want to point out, many of the artifacts I breezed through today, we've open sourced because we believe in being able to give back. So the values that we put together as a team, the expectations that we put together of each other as coworkers, you can find that in the GitHub repo called XTTMers. And if you saw something today that you can't find there, make sure and email me or reach out to me because it's possible we could open source that and give back to the community. Thank you.